This is the weekly roundup presented by the Conversation Project, and I am Jay Clifton Payne. The 12 stories I present for you here were caught my attention based on your engagement with our Conversation Project feeds on Facebook and X from Friday, January 30th, 2025 to Friday, February the 7th, 2025, which makes this the roundup for the week ending February the 8th. Wrong date in the calendar. Sorry about that. February the 8th, 2025. We could fix that, but we're not going to because this is live. Live to tape, so we're gonna keep on going. But you get the gist of it. This past week, these are stories that cover a whole lot of Donald Trump, a little bit of Little House on Prairie, and Punxsutawney Phil because he's got to get his say on Groundhog Day. Plus, more stories to cover the full week. 12 stories that caught my attention based off of engagement and stories that might need a little bit of review or maybe some updates based on what's going on. Very quick run for there. So let's see how this thing works out for here. I want to remind you, our website is a conversationproject.com for all details about us, all the things we offer, and of course, the email address, the conversation inbox at gmail.com. All the calls to action will come at the end of the show. So just get through the news and then I will bombard you with those things. Let's start off with headline number one. And these are in literally no particular order as we go through these. These are literally just 12 stories out of the batch of 58 stories or so we had in a week that you guys put into the feeds for the Daily Show. And we need a little update on. Let's start with story number one because we have a lot of Trump to get to. So let's get to this one. The biggest story of a lot of big stories is the fact that Trump had a pause, officially put the pause on tariffs to Canada and Mexico. But the China ones are still going to be in place and they are in place. China's going to, their retaliatory ones coming back. Now, there's breaking news on that one where I think China is going to have a relief on those for small packages, but the big ones are coming. But what happened in the tariff war, that wasn't, if you will, Donald Trump announced weeks ago that he was going to put 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and on Mexican goods, basically right off the bat because they need to do more to fight fentanyl and fight the bad migrants coming into town. Canada came up with an idea to make a czar for fentanyl and to do more battle with the troops, put some troops around to make sure that more people aren't crossing the border. Mexico did a similar thing. They sent a large batch of troops to their border, and they had some works going back and forth on some other drug deals, making a cartel sort of, get together with the states and the Mexican states. The head scratcher is the fact that these are things that either were already being done or were pledged very early on, either to try to alleviate the tariff talk early on, or something that they were going to do with Biden anyway. So there's that. The win does come because Donald Trump got to say he put the tariffs on or was about to, and he pulled them back and he got some concessions. So he got to do that. As I said, there's some breaking news going forward this weekend as the tariffs that were supposed to be in China may be being pulled back before the 10th for the big tariffs that China's going to levy on us for retaliatory. But there's a big back and forth about Shein and small packages. Those tariffs apparently are now gone. So there's no big added bonus to anything going on those ways as well. Linda McMahon got a little talk as she is finding out that she needs to make herself a job to put herself out of a job. And I've been in those places before where you get put someplace to fix things, to make sure that whatever is going on in that department is basically kilt nicely and gets put together to other people, other places so that you don't have that job. The department doesn't exist anymore. This is what's happening here for the Department of Education. Workers are going to be suspended or have been suspended over diversity training programs from Trump's first term with Betsy DeVos. And Trump is in the process of dismantling the entire Department of Education. It's telling Linda McMahon her job is to work herself out of a job. But the first part of this is the fact that people are being blasted on DEI issues from Trump's first term when Betsy DeVos, the previous boss, told them to take these DEI classes. Now people have been working for the Department of Education between the first termination and the second termination are now finding themselves sitting at home because of the big battle against DEI. This is one of the first things Trump is basically obsessed with a lot of things, but particularly DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training and programs, essentially trying to kill them all in all cases. The unintended consequences, such as getting rid of people who took a class 8 years ago because they took a class 8 years ago and aren't doing anything now with it, is something there. Unintended consequences is the theme of the Trump presidency so far, and we have plenty of that going forward. As I said, Linda McMahon's job is to eliminate herself for the job. We'll see how well she can do that and whether the Department of Education does exist in 4 years or so. because Trump wants to give it all back to the states. Even though we're 48th in education out of 50 countries, he wants to give it to all the states so that we have 50 different education standards. So we'll still be off track. Let's move on to another thing that baffled me instantly, but it is what it is. Now, DEI is the word, or the non-word, if you will, because Donald Trump doesn't want it. But he did make a declaration, as all presidents seem to have done since they've enacted this, to make Black History Month official. He declared February Black History Month and said, we will celebrate it at the White House. We will do what we can to celebrate the great history of some great Black historians, historic people. On the same day, Pete Hegseth, the Department of Defense Secretary, said, we're not doing it, period. No identity months at the DOD, period. No Women's Month, no Black History Month, no nothing going forward, because DEI. That doesn't mean you can't actually celebrate it. It's like your birthday. You don't take it away. Just can't, have a party at work because they're working that day. So you can do stuff off hours, do stuff off base, do stuff not in official capacity, official buildings. That's how the Pentagon is taking on the deal for Black History Month. Donald Trump says he's going to have something at the White House. It's been 8 days. We shall see. Taking a step down to Panama. Panama ended its ties with China's foreign investment program after pressure from the U.S. This is a picture, if you're watching the video, of the president of Panama and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, having a chat as they're standing by the canal or outside the canal in a boat, basically going through it. And what they're seeing is the whole operation, how everything works there at the canal. Now, what's happening with this was the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, that China put in place, that is essentially the two ports on both sides of the canal that Donald Trump says they're running a canal, have been closed or will be closed in 2026. The work, the money, the things put into upgraded infrastructure with the China partnership is going away in a year. Okay. Now, the Chinese are not happy. They're disappointed what happened, but this is what's going on based off the pressure, and it is pressure, that the U.S. had about, getting rid of the Chinese influence. How much influence did China actually have in this? Well, it's debatable. In the comments we've had all week, we've had people saying, well, China's actually throwing money into the issue while the states are just rattling swords and holding guns to people's head to do stuff. Are the United States going to actually pay up and fix and keep upgrade for the Panama Canal? That's a good question. Now that we're essentially trying to own it or re-own it, it will be a question that will be addressed, or addressed poorly, fairly soon. Addressed fairly poorly after the meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump a few days ago was what to do with the Gaza Strip once everything is cleared. And that's where it got hassled, because it was clearing the Gaza Strip, not ending the war or getting back hostages, that became the issue of the night. While doing the joint conference, Donald Trump let know that he intended for the U.S. to do something to take over Gaza Strip. Essentially, once the fighting was over, and that was something cleared up, when people are done fighting, they're going to come in, they're going to clean it up, because it's a hellhole. Nobody wants to live there anyway. They're going to make it a beautiful, nice place to live where everyone can come back and do what's going on. When asked about what happens to the 2 million people who actually live there right now, Trump said, why would they want to live there? They can go live in Egypt. They can go live in Jordan. They maybe live in Saudi Arabia. Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia already said no to those things. They said the whole thing about them having peace with Israel means there must be a place for the Palestinians to live, and they should live where they are and not come someplace else, especially where they are. Stabilizing the Middle East is always a thing. And it's one of those things where Donald Trump gets credit for actually doing something to stabilize things, even though most of that was to Israel's, benefit. Israel, i.e. Benjamin Netanyahu, kind of nodded his head and said, yes, this is great, even though it was the first time he heard about it, and giving over the land to the United States to run as the Riviera of the Middle East, something that Trump basically coined in the moment, wasn't exactly on his bingo card either. But he's playing along because that's what he does. USAID, I said it properly finally, is having issues. Their staff was barred from headquarters after Musk's team and Trump agreed to close it down pretty quickly. USAID is a part of the government that essentially gives you aid, gives money to various people in various places. Now, because Donald Trump says it's just a hellhole for corruption, because they give money away to people like it's like candy, Elon Musk has gone through the books, a lot of books, and seeing that he doesn't want this to be existing. So Trump's like, we're going to get rid of it. Some of the background on this. USAID is actually investigating Donald Trump for some of his, investigating Elon Musk for some of his practices. So there's a conflict of interest for the Doge boys going through this place here. There's also the issue of what they actually do. And so there are the complaints about condoms being sent to Hamas, which is a bit overblown, pun intended. And there are issues like the fact that this is how aid is sent to various nations. This is how we pay for the food and things that we send to various posts. Many of it bought by us, by American farmers, so that's less revenue for them. And also, a big big talking point came out about Sesame Street. There's an Iraqi version of Sesame Street. You may have heard about this before. That basically teaches kids to wash your hands and have good manners and not be mad at Americans for stuff. It's propaganda for kids, just like Transformers, G.I. Joe, and He-Man was back in the day. Cartoons for kids, children's entertainment, teach people good things in the process of getting them entertained. Those things would be going away with USAID. Now, the staff essentially literally locked out of their building, locked out of their activity, and all their passwords and logins for remote work was shut off because they're going to shut it down. Donald Trump is really moving very quickly to make things happen, which is the basic Silicon Valley way. Break things, move fast, break things, fix them later. The problem is this is not Silicon Valley, and the things that are being broken may be found out to be harder to fix later. And that wasn't really the biggest Trump thing. I said the big Trump thing was actually starting off with holding off the tariffs and whatever. That's not the biggest thing. We got something a lot larger coming up right next. But first, we've got the pause from news stories. 12 stories total, 6 stories down, 6 more to go. We're glad you're with us here. If you're watching me live on the Saturday broadcast or in the future as the recording goes by, we thank you so much for being with us here. We ask you some favors. Help us grow our show. And we have some extra growth coming on. We'll talk about later on. Like the video, like the audio podcast, like the newsletter, although you won't hear me say that about newsletter, if you enjoy the news and the coverage and the commentary that we receive. It's been kind of a rough couple of weeks, and it's not so much Donald Trump stuff. That's actually great. Content is awesome. But a lot of things have been happening to make things work and not work as well. And so we're sort of battling a couple things in real life and on this thing here. It would help me a lot to know that I'm doing the right things, have the right shows going through for you by you liking it, me seeing it. Help me a lot by you liking it and the algorithm seeing it as well. Help me immensely, preposterously, outstandingly, if you would share this with other like-minded people who enjoy news like this, enjoy commentary like this, enjoy my voice, if you will. And if you're not subscribed to this automatically, subscribe so that you don't miss out when this comes in your feed. Now, the live broadcast of the Saturday show, the weekly roundup, it fluctuates based on timing. So it's meant to be done early. Sometimes it's done later, but we try to get it done. But you can watch it whenever it comes live or whenever you want to watch it in the future. It's in your feed by subscribing. You can also subscribe to us at various other places. Go to our website. This is conversationproject.com to see all the places you can subscribe to. X, Threads, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and our email newsletter is links there as well. Plus, whatever podcast you have, we're probably there as well. So check us out there. Like, share, and subscribe. Help us grow. Help the News Nation grow with more news nerds. While this is really a complicated issue, this is one that I stepped out and actually talked about in more detail on a smaller news clip because we had to talk about it. But the biggest thing about this that drew me to this is this picture right here. I didn't even stretch it out to the full stretch to fill the blue square. This is exactly the picture as I saw this on the news article. Saw this. This is the most perfect photo op ever. Donald Trump knows how to make a photo op, knows how to make things look out. Him surrounded by all these girls in the center and all the women are outside is an act of beauty. This is what this should be done. What is this picture about? He is signing the executive order banning men from women's sports. That's what he did. He signed executive order officially banning men from women's sports across the nation, across the board. NCAA officially, and of course, women's sports at high schools and all those levels as well. Now, the NCAA actually announced they're going to comply with this immediately. They're going to basically make sure that there will be no trans players in their sporting capacity, which of course has made a lot of people mad. Here's the thing. There's a lot of criticism from advocates from LGBTQ plus folks. So that's going to happen. A lot of folks directly for the transgender athletes saying this is unfair. Now, by the numbers, Per most research, what we have is with over 500,000 athletes in NCAA, total athletes, and around 200, 250 female athletes, somewhere in that level, about half, a little less than half of that going on. There are 10 instances, 10 of transgender athletes playing in a sport. Now, maybe someone has not identified themselves, and there's more than 10, but there are 10 identified instances of a trans person, basically a person assigned as male at birth who is transitioning or just feels like a woman, if you will, playing for women's sports. So it's an issue. There's a lot of people who have issues with the unfairness of the actual body types. So there's an issue there. And there's issues with the fairness because how many people does it actually affect? Not as many as you would think, or not as many as you're led to believe. But if you're dealing with it, trust me, you're dealing with it. More comments on that here. You can check out the video we have in the feed for full feed for that one. But this is something that I actually put more thought and process into. Not going to take time here to do that. My short opinion is I have worries about trans athletes in women's sports, but also realize it's not the large numbers that people are trying to scare you to think, which makes it complicated. TikTok is not exactly pulling its weight, but it may pull the actual app for reals. Basically thinking back and forth about the deal that Trump wants to broker and how good or bad it is. Recent reports say that ByteDance is going to just pull TikTok. They seem to be delaying the negotiations as a Chinese parent company of the app that we put a law to say you must sell it to someone else, and they did not do that. And then we extended the law at the time, and they're not doing it because the problem is they're not actually doing it. There's some back and forth on whether they really want Elon Musk to buy it and put it in the X universe, if you will. There are plenty of people who've thrown their names out there, been on TV saying, hey, we've got some money. I've got some folks. We'll put it together. And it's not being sold. There's no negotiations. Right now, past the deadline to kill it on the 19th, there's a 75-day extended deadline to try to make a bigger sale. Trump is trying to broker this, I guess, directly, I guess. Maybe he'll buy it himself. In fact, we do have the word about the new fund that we're building by the United States so that maybe we could buy a TikTok. I don't know if I have money in there by the time the time is over, but something about the U.S. government owning TikTok seems even scarier than the Chinese government owning TikTok. Something about that just is not working for me. But we do know TikTok exists. We do know that they know what they're doing. We do know that they may just pull the whole plug instead of giving us access to the algorithm. They'll just lose that cash flow and, have Americans freaked out and, dealing with their addictions to the TikTok, which may be the whole point all along. Southern California Edison admits its equipment likely sparked a LA firestorm. Probably. So preliminary findings are showing that an out-of-service line that had been used since the 70s may have been turned on in an area that was extremely dry and start one of the blazes. They also may have caused some issues in another fire. 2 fires they may have had issues for. This is the only one they're actually owning up to, but they said there might have been some issues with the other place when the fire was already set. So blah, blah, yada, 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 going forward. One of them, one of the fires destroyed lots of property and lots of lives. The other one, not as much property. It was more rural, so it didn't seem like it did much damage. But they've done this before, as in they've started fires in areas before and said they didn't do it. And then eventually said, okay, we did it. They'll deal with that one. Whatever will be from this one, we'll have to take time to deal with it as they're still dealing with the fires and the aftermath of what's going on. But SCE admits it might have had a hand in these big wildfires in Los Angeles. Maybe, probably, kind of, sort of, we might have had something going on there. Maybe. It may be a bit late, but the FAA is going to reduce flights at the Reagan National Airport following the deadly crash from 2 weeks ago. Now, it may be a little too late going back and forth because of busy corridors. But the issue coming from the American Airlines commuter jet that crashed into a military helicopter, where it looks like the helicopter was out of position while the jet was making its approach to land, is calling for a change here at Reagan Airport and maybe looking at some things at other places as well. Reagan will reduce its airport's arrivals from 28 to 26. So that's 2 less planes flying in the arrivals pattern per hour for a course of the day. That adjustment will add about another 40 minutes to your delay time if there's a delay time. So if you've got time to wait on there, add another 40 minutes because there's 2 less planes flying in and out per hour. But this is a way to sort of alleviate some of the congestion that this airport has. This is not a popular airport, if you will, but it's popular for people who are living in Washington, D.C. Most of the actual folks in Congress and the Senate fly out of this one. They don't fly out of Dulles. They don't go to Baltimore because of the distance, but they fly out of this one. So they make it amenable for more things for direct flights into it for their convenience. And for people who are neighbors, it's actually good. It's actually better for getting in and out. But in the meantime, once they drop these flights from 28 to 26, it's going to be a bit more slow and congested going forward. There's a beef between Laura Ingalls Wilder, i.e., Melissa Gilbert, and Megyn Kelly, because Netflix is going to do a new Little House on the Prairie, and the new version of it coming soon. I don't know if they started taping or not, but they are going to have the stories that were written and based off the books by Laura Ingalls from back in the day. Now, Megyn Kelly is one of the people who are shouting to the rooftops, and we have some people in our comments as well about wokeifying the series, the very basic, family-friendly, beloved classic, and changing it to add more things of the times, pushing that down into people's throats in a manner that where it looked like it was going on in the 1870s. Now, Melissa Gilbert, who starred in the show, portrayed Laura Ingalls, who essentially wrote the books, the background, said, we really weren't all that accurate. We put in a lot of racial and sexual and things of the times in the things going forward. We dealt with misogyny. We dealt with racism. We dealt with people who were others. We dealt with things that were going on in the times, the 70s and 80s, and put them in a way that just sort of fit into the times, the 1870s in the books. So wokeifying is nothing new per se, and Netflix will do what they need to do to make it relevant and going forward. I'm doubting they're putting transgender people in the schoolhouse with Laura Ingalls Wilder. That might be a bit too far, but some people are worried about losing the innocence of the original show. And then some people just say they don't like Michael Landon, which is odd because Michael Landon, I think everybody seemed to like Michael Landon. There have been some comments from folks out there, folks like you, weren't a fan of Michael Landon. Who knew? And finally, the rat has his say as Punxsutawney Phil puts a curse on us, predicting 6 more weeks of winter based on Groundhog Day. Now, we had a story about a week and a half ago, right before we got into February, where we talked about the chances of not having Phil or many of his other compadres come out and do the Groundhog thing, looking for a shadow and telling us, even though they can't talk, what happened. Maybe having a real meteorologist look at the forecast and say, here's a cake. Let's cut the cake. And the cake says snow. I'm not sure how they do that. I'll ask my friend Amber, who makes those type of cakes, if she can do a snow cake or a heat cake or something like that. But it didn't happen. Phil, the most famous of the rats on Groundhog Day, the 139th annual Punxsutawney Phil celebration they had there in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, saw a shadow and indicated 6 more weeks of winter. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil, for the love. Let's move on because we're now done with the stories, but we're not quite done with what's going on now. We need to sort of explain how we get here and what happens. And we'll do that in just a moment. But right now, I want to remind you that this weekend's program, all the weekend's programs are sponsored by Ground News. Ground News is a news aggregator, just like we are, but they do something a bit different. They aggregate everything. There are no excuses, no outtakes. Everything, every story, every piece of any type of issue you got, it's there. Pick a topic, look for a story on Ground News. They'll have the coverage from all angles, from the left, from the right, from folks that are more or less in the middle. You can see exactly what people are saying about all sort of topics and how it's being sent. If you are like me and stuck on the Trump stuff and Trump does a thing, you can go look for Ground News and see what the thing is and see how Fox News is covering it, how MSNBC is covering it, and how the AP is covering it. So you can see who's got what perspectives and how many people are covering it different ways. You see who covers it. You see who owns those companies. You see the liberal or conservative bent they have going forward. And if you go to their blind spot section, use that, you get to see stories that are being covered exclusively by one side or the other that for some reason the other side doesn't want you to hear about, or the other side really wants you to hear about. If you get me on that one. Ground News right now is offering a great discount of 40% off their deals, and you can get in on the ground floor of Ground News with us by using our link to get us a little bit of help. We get a small commission. This is a conversationproject.com/ground news. This is a conversationproject.com/ground news. Get in on the ground today and see exactly what you want to see about the news coverage, the actual coverage, who's covering it, how they're covering it, and how the headlines and the actual bylines make a difference in what's being said to different classes. Find out what's going on with your news from us, because we'll give you a good swath of things happening that may not be covered because mainstream media is out there. Find out what their actual coverage is in total by going to Ground News. Use our link. This is conversationproject.com/ground news to get the website or get the app for yourself. The Conversation Project lives online at this is conversationproject.com. This is our website, our home online, where you can find all the things about us. And we are glad to provide this to you, plus the videos, plus the audios, plus the commentary to get into this. This is a intense labor that we do for you to get you some new stuff. It's part of the thing that I do to keep myself sane in this world that is insane with the news going on and some of the things that life has thrown at me. This is something that, oddly enough, is calming, soothing, and keeps me focused. So we ask you to stop by our website. This is conversationproject.com. We'll get you some calls to action in a moment, some more call to action. The first call to action is dealing with our partners. We give our partners mucho love on the weekends. And so we're giving out lots of love to Harold Braxton, Colby Green, and Eldon Kidd at the cup of coffee level worth of partnerships. That's $5 a month. And spare change, Joy Winters, $1 a month. We're hoping that she's going to up it from March and go to $5. It's there as well. We also have a pot of coffee, a higher level tier as well. We also have joint memberships on YouTube specifically that we're experimenting with right now. What partners get is direct access to me, and you can still get access to me, direct access, but they get the insights of what's going on. We put out a weekly video of what's happening, what's going through. Every so often, we'll put out a clip of it for the rest of the folks. I think we'll do that for next week going forward, because we had some new things happen this week that were really kind of interesting. And you get a chance to see what's inside, and you get a chance to basically vote up some things before other people can vote them up as well. So check out our partners. Our partnerships page is at the website. This is conversationproject.com/partnerships. Our processor is called Buy Me a Coffee. So go to buymeacoffee.com/jclevelandpayne, and you can jump in on the greatness that is Buy Me a Coffee, because it's awesome, and help us support what's going on here as well. You can also visit more sponsors and do one-time donations as well. Check out the website for ways to engage with us that way. Now, the engagement for what goes on daily is simple. As we said, our website home, this is conversationproject.com, and our email address is the conversationinbox@gmail.com. What you do there is go to the website. You can see past episodes. You can see more sponsors. You can see more places to go. You can go through our origin story, and you can email me at the conversationinbox@gmail.com with anything you want to. Specifically, if you want to talk about the stories we're putting out there in the feeds. The feeds are our pages on Facebook and X. Facebook.com/This is the Conversation Project, and X.com/TH_conversation. Every 50 minutes or so, we post news articles from various sources there. You can engage in them. You can like them. You can love them. You can read them. You can share them. You can comment on them. The more you engage in a story, the better chance we have of talking about it going forward. So we produce about 30 stories in a day. The time span is basically from midnight to about 3 a.m. On the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, early Monday, we get about 90 stories. We pull the top 30 stories from your engagement and give you 10 stories for Monday. Tuesday through Friday, we pull the top 15 stories, 16 stories from the 30 stories you get in that day and give you 8 of them. From that, we take the stories that we posted in our daily show called Things You Might Not Have Heard and see which ones catch my attention based on the quick look and how they got engaged in, and specifically stories that need a bit more updating because something happened that really needs to be talked about. We'll pull those out and give you those as well. Or here for this thing here. That's where the 12 stories for this thing came from. These are stories that caught my attention from the 58 stories that happened over the week. So, did you enjoy it? Did you like it? feeds. Once again, facebook.com/this is the conversation project and x.com/th_conversation. Check out the video, check out the links, some videos as well. Like them, love them, hate them, share them, engage in the stories. The more you engage, better chance we have of talking about them on the weekdays and right here on the weekend. So we are done. If you enjoyed how we presented some things today, let me know. We did a couple things to make it a little pithy, and it's working. Although I'm working with less information, less notes, because my script is a third of the size. But I was able to do this much faster, much quicker. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you like that, let me know. If you want more content, want bigger, deeper, deep dives into this weekly roundups, let me know as well. We are adjusting going forward. Oh, the new thing. In the links here in the description, there is a link to our new page. It's called You're Welcome. It's a new page that we're doing it was for extra commentary. We are basically commandeering it to do commentary specifically for extra stuff from the Conversation Project. And Your Welcome was kind of a cheesy way to sort of be snarky about stuff. We'll figure out the actual name for it because I don't want to be so snarky, but this is how I really feel. So if you want to see how I really feel about Donald Trump and Donald Trump being a sore loser and having no humor, we have one video posted right now to check out. Check out our first video and engage in it. Subscribe to it. Grow that channel just like you grow this one so they can grow in tandem. In the meantime, love you and mean it. Thank you so much for being a part of what's happening around the world and with this Conversation Project. Stay limber, stay hydrated, stay on task. We have a long way to go. Life is not a sprint. It's a marathon. So make sure you're ready for it. With that, I shall bid you adieu. We'll do this again with the 12 top stories, more or less picked by me, of the week next Saturday.